Welcome to day 2 of our real-world ETL testing training. Today, we are getting straight to the heart of the job. We're going to master SQL joins and then use them to find some real project-breaking defects. Let's get into it. All right, let's start with a reality check. On any project you work on, a massive 70%, yeah, you heard that right, of all the validation you will ever do comes down to how well you know just one single concept. And that concept is SQL Joins. You know, it's really simple. If your joins are weak, your ability to test effectively is weak. It just falls apart. So today, we are going to fix that for good. So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with the why this is so critical. Then we'll get into the only tools you'll actually need. From there, we'll apply them to find real defects, and we'll wrap up by completely shifting your mindset to think like a senior tester. Okay, let's dive right in. The number one rule you have to get into your head is that in any real project, business data is always scattered across multiple systems. It's never just sitting there for you in one neat little table. So for example, think about a typical insurance project. You're going to have policy details in one system, you'll have all the financial data like payments and taxes in a completely different one, and then all the customer info is living in yet another CRM database. And this, right here, is your main job as an ETL tester. You are the person who has to bring all this scattered data together. It's on you to confirm that all the business rules are being met correctly across all of it. So let's talk about our toolkit. Now, you can forget all that textbook stuff about a dozen different types of joins. I'm serious. For 99% of all the real-world ETL work you'll ever do, you only need to master 3. Let's go through them. First up, the inner join. I want you to think of this as your absolute workhorse. You're going to use this about 80% of the time to validate mandatory links. Things like, hey, does every single policy have a corresponding payment record? If it doesn't, something is seriously wrong. Next is the left join. Think of this as your primary weapon for detective work. Its main job, to find records that were supposed to be there, records that existed in the source system but somehow got lost during that ETL process. And finally, we have the full outer join. Now, you won't use this every day, but when you need to do a complete side-by-side comparison of 2 huge data sets to find every single difference, like during a big data migration or a full system audit, this thing is an incredibly powerful tool to have in your back pocket. All right, now for the fun part. Let's take these tools and actually apply them. We're going on our first real defect hunt, looking for the most common and critical issues you're going to find out there. So here's a question you're going to face all the time. How do you prove with 100% certainty that some data from the source system just never made it into the target database? The answer is this classic, beautiful query. Here's the magic. You use a simple left join, and then you check for nulls, which just means you're looking for empty or missing values on the target side. This brilliantly pinpoints every single record that got lost. Trust me, this is a defect you are going to log again and again. Okay, so what about data that did make it across, but the values are just wrong? If you can master this next query, and I really mean this, you're already ahead of most junior testers on any project. The minus query is your go-to tool for finding data mismatches. It directly compares the source and the target and tells you exactly which records have different values. It's clean, it's fast, and it is incredibly effective. So finding mismatches is huge, but what about data that arrived, but it's just plain wrong? Let's move on and hunt for a totally different class of problem. Those critical data quality issues, things like duplicates, empty fields, and bad dates that can cause huge business and financial problems. First up, duplicates. Now, these aren't just minor bugs. These are severe defects. We're talking about customers getting double billed, completely wrong financial reports, and even the company failing an audit. It's serious stuff. So how do we find them? With this query. This is the industry standard, non-negotiable way to do it. You use group by to bundle records by the unique ID, and then the halving clause finds any of those bundles with a count greater than 1. If this query returns even a single row, you found a severe defect, end of story. Next up, mandatory fields. Look, if a key piece of information like a policy ID is null, meaning it's empty, that whole record is basically useless. You find these with a simple check, like where policy ID is null. But it goes beyond just empty fields. You also have to hunt for logical errors, especially with dates. I mean, can you imagine finding a policy where the start date is after the end date? That's impossible, right? These are classic, high-severity defects that you find with simple date comparisons, and believe me, they happen way more often than you'd think. Okay, this is where it's really interesting. Let's see how we can combine everything we've talked about to solve a real production issue, exactly how a senior tester would do it. So here's the scenario. A defect ticket lands on your desk from the business. The final premium amount in their reports is wrong, and it's your job to go in, investigate, and find the root cause. And this is how you solve it. We don't guess. We build one single powerful query. Watch how the pieces connect. First, we join the source policy table to the source payment table. Why? To get the base premium and the tax. Then, we join that result to our final target table. Now everything is in one row, and we can simply check where base premium plus tax does not equal the final premium amount. Bam! The query spits out every single record with that calculation error. This is exactly how it's done on the job. So here's the most crucial point, and I really want you to let this sink in. Experienced senior testers, they don't actually start by thinking about what SQL to write. That comes second. They start by asking a much more powerful question. They ask, what can go wrong with this data? They think about the business. Can a record be duplicated? Could it get lost? Could the calculation be wrong? All the defects we've been hunting today. And from that question, the right SQL query just becomes obvious. This is the mindset you have to build. And to get there, you have to practice. These 5 fundamental query patterns, you need to practice them until you can write them from memory, without even thinking about it. This is your mandatory homework. This is what builds the muscle. Master these and get ready for day 3, because tomorrow we're taking it up a level. We're going to cover aggregation testing, reconciliation, and how to validate data from the perspective of a business manager. See you then.